Okay, so it's podcast time again, and as usual, we are learning as we go. So in today's podcast, if you are watching on YouTube, I'll hopefully have placed the time codes in the description below for the specific subjects that we cover in today's chat. And as usual, if you didn't know, you can listen to us on Podbean, Spotify, Google and Apple Podcasts, as well as Amazon, Samsung and Podchaser. And on YouTube, you can find an audio-only version as well as the full video version. So today is a family affair. 4 members of my family are cab drivers, 5 including me, my brother. I have 2 nephews that are cab drivers, and my niece's husband is also a cab driver. So if you're one of those who thinks the taxi game is dead, ask yourself this simple question. Why do so many family members encourage other family members to do it? And it would be quite a cruel trick if the game was actually dead. So what's covered today? Well, as quick as I can, we're going to cover redlining, rank etiquette, Heathrow tags, station rank, surviving COVID, Cabbie Twitter, vest season, the UCG up feed, and being young and doing the knowledge. So I hope you enjoyed today's podcast.
Are you serious? No, are you serious? You got to wind up.
No, are you serious?
Actually, no, I'm questioning myself.
So this is quite a special little podcast, really, because I wanted it to be like a family podcast. It's a shame that Sam couldn't be here, but we're here with Nicky O'Connor, who's my nephew and the son of my sister Teresa. We have John Osborne, who is married to my niece Jodie, who's the daughter of my other sister Sherry. So welcome to you both to the WizAnn podcast. It's going to be quite nice. John and Nick have both been cab drivers for quite a while. I'm not quite sure how long now. I mean, Nick, how long have you been a cabbie now?
11 and a half years now.
11 and a half years. Yeah. What about you, John?
8. Be 8 in September.
Okay. Yeah. So both of you are, coming up veterans. Yeah, not bad.
Well, when you think 11 and a half years ago, the meter still was 220.
In terms of both, when you both started, the job was actually very good at that stage, and you've both lived through the downturn completely, and now we are coming to a new era. When
I started, there was no Uber. Halo wasn't around either.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there was Addison Lee, obviously. They did a lot of the corporate stuff. But in terms of the taxi trade, Uber didn't exist. Halo wasn't around yet. I think I had maybe a year, 18 months before Halo was available to drivers.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously it's gone through many different phases over the last few years. But yeah, it was very different.
It was entertaining back then, wasn't it? 11 years ago, it was a good job. You was happy when you passed out.
Yeah, it was certainly a lot easier to get around and to get to places. It was. I mean, it's a great job now. It's got its ups and downs, the same as every job.
Yeah, but you've lived through it.
Yeah.
But John, you did it. I think you lived through the bad times completely by working as a cab driver, whereas you had a.
Yeah, I mean, 2014, I passed out. I think it was September. Uber had been around whilst I was studying the knowledge, and I just remember when I worked at WizAnn over on the Blackwood Tunnel area, all the questions I ever got from so many students who were on 56, 28s was, is it worth it? Is it still worth it anymore? And as much as I was being positive because I didn't want people to give up. Not had to, because I didn't know. I wasn't out myself then. When I passed out, to be honest with you, you say the bad times, a lot of drivers used to go to me, you don't know what it used to be like. And I always used to think, well, there's no way of me measuring what it used to be like, because I can only go by the here and now. And I've always been quite positive. I've loved the job from the offset.
Yeah.
I've never found it a chore going to work. I enjoy going to work. I've always made it work around my family, which is the beauty of it. My son does a lot of football now, as you know. I can change my shifts accordingly. I mean, even during COVID, I found ways to get through it. I've got private jobs. I was working hospitals. I was advertising on social media and getting jobs from the elderly where I live at in Essex and things like that. So I've always tried to make it work for me. I've always said that the biggest hindrance to black taxis is the traffic. If the traffic is there, people are fixated more with a meter because they're sitting in the back of a cab. You're not moving and they're seeing the meter tick. So for me, our biggest competitor is the traffic, because that's what kills us. That's what can add to the fares. And it's quite, I used to find it very frustrating when people used to assume that you love sitting in traffic as a taxi driver. A lot of the public think, oh yeah, you love sitting in traffic, you're getting paid for doing nothing. And bums on seats. The more jobs you do, the more you earn.
But we
It's
don't
not
want to do
rocket
nothing,
science.
do we? We
No,
rather rather be going somewhere.
Of course. So for me, like when people say you've gone through the bad times, I know what you mean in terms of Uber exploded onto the scene. But apart from the price, the price cutting that they try to do, that they've tried to do, which is now coming back and biting them on the backside a little bit. I think what they've done really is, to a lot of people, made us look better.
Yeah, slowly. We've
Slowly but
hung in
surely,
it.
yeah. And I also think that I'm getting a lot of people jumping in now, young people, who definitely are used to getting lifts home.
Yes.
They're not used to night buses anymore like we used to do. They're not used to getting on the late train home. They're used to being taken home by a minicab or Uber, whatever it is. But now a lot of their drivers have left their industry during COVID and their prices have gone up. A lot of the youngsters are jumping in with us late. And
so they've created a new market for us.
A little bit. I genuinely believe that.
No, I've heard that from somebody else, so I'm going to say it's getting to be that way.
People are jumping in, like youngsters, students around Shoreditch, for example, at 11 at night, and they're giving me a postcode. That, to me, tells me straight away that they don't know, that just give me the road and I know where it is, generally, or something. They jump in and go, E8, da-da-da-da, and I'm like, mate, I don't know what that is. And they're like looking at me, what do you mean you don't know what it is? I say, I don't use postcodes. I don't have a sat-nav, so you have to give me the street name or at least a train station it's near or something like that, So I understand the negativity from people, but I can only go by the time I've been out and,
Yeah, but
I enjoy it.
You survived the COVID years.
Yeah.
The Uber thing, I remember that happening. We was there together in the school when that was happening. And I remember people coming in who were foreseeing it, minicab drivers, and they were very doom and gloom about us and happy about themselves, kind of rubbing their hands and go, this game's all over. Uber's going to be da-da-da-da. And now I think that part's gone. That's, for me, they were always just another version of minicabs setting up, and they never really took our market, which is very interesting that we've now touched upon the fact that they have become used to driving around these different people and now becoming a new market share for us, which is great. Nick, you didn't work through COVID completely, didn't you? You actually
I was lucky enough that a friend of mine offered me a job through COVID, which I went and done a little bit of work elsewhere. Obviously still kept my cab on the road and I was able to go work when I wanted to. It was a nice change to go and do something different. At that point, I'd driven a cab full time for close to 9 years. Yeah. So to go and do something different for a little while was good. It was a nice change, and to get out the cab. And something that John was saying about, or you were saying about the market and who we're picking up now. My argument was always that Uber never really took our customers away from us. Our customers were still there. Yes. If you're a black taxi user, you're a black taxi user. There's very few people that are going to be swayed into an Uber if they're used to using black taxis. Yeah. So, I mean, like you're saying now, we are getting more and more younger people that are used to just being driven home to their door. Yeah. They might have used Uber in the past, and more than likely they've been ripped off at some point and had a surge price or something like that. And they think, well, I'm not going to do that again. I did recently wanted to go to Stratford. So I went on the Free Now app like I always do, and the cheapest out of all the options it threw up was the black cab. So that in actual fact was kind of advertising for us, because I'm visually seeing a price comparison, and the price difference was about 5-6 quid. Yeah. So it was like, well, what's the enticement then? Yeah. And obviously we all know they're operating under a massive loss, which you can't keep doing. So they've got to try and turn a profit, and they're going to just end up being very regular minicab company that's running around, and people have got to pay a similar fare. And fair enough, these drivers deserve a fair wage, because it's ridiculously low as it's been. So the thing is, compared to, say, a year and a half ago to now, how's it looking?
What, pre-COVID?
Yeah.
It's difficult for me to say because I'm busy. I'm not going to lie. I'm sure you have noticed that it's busy. Are we getting a bigger piece of a smaller pie because there's less cabs on the road? Possibly.
Possibly, yes.
That's a factor.
Because I've never known queues at mainline stations during the day like I have now.
Right.
Have people's habits changed? Are people coming in by British Rail, but they're not happy to get on the underground because it's more, more farmed in, like farmyard animals? I think a lot of people are You know, I'm picking up people out of Liverpool Street rank and dropping them pretty much, let's say, for example, by Chancery Lane Station, whereas before they could have jumped on the Underground, just as an example. So I think a lot of people's travel habits have changed as well. And I think a lot of people are reluctant to get on the tube, most definitely.
You think because of close proximity to
I think so, because I had a lady in a cab the other day who worked in the theatre industry, and she was telling me, oh, it's great to see London booming, the restaurants, the bars, etc., etc. But then she alluded to the theatre industry, and she said, yeah, we're doing okay. I said, really? You're not buzzing? I thought you'd be like, you know. She said, no, we're not. The theatres aren't like they used to be. She said, I think Andrew Lloyd Webber's last show, Cinderella, had to close early, whether it's because it was poor or more down to the fact that it wasn't getting bums on seats. And she thinks it's because the theatres in London, again, are very antiquated,
people,
very close, and she thinks people are still a little bit dubious about doing that, and that to me makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. So
People's habits have changed. People want space. British Rails generally are bigger trains, more space, windows open.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Above ground. So are we getting a bigger piece of a smaller pie? Possibly. I think people now just want to get home or just want to get where they want to be.
Yeah.
And as much as we have taken on a whole new sector of a whole new target audience of customers to some degree, I think also what I noticed late at night is people are desperate to get home. And you will see people, if there's no cabs, they'll just try and get on the phone, whatever. People just want to get home now. And it's a shame that so many cabs and cab drivers have possibly disappeared out of the trade, which COVID.
So there's
has
multiple
done.
factors here, but I think probably one of the biggest. I've never thinking about travelling to work in the West End now, and I've got to go to work and be there for 9 o'clock in the morning. I would be really apprehensive of getting on a tube train and standing toe to toe with everybody.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Especially if you're of a certain age, especially if you've got maybe illnesses or asthma, or you're one of the technically vulnerable people. I had a call today at Freddie's watching my son play football. The guy that I brought in every day for 2 years, they want me to find 3 other drivers to do work for the tube strike days because they, you know, so because I diversified somewhat, it's actually made me a lot more accessible to people that never used cabs before.
Yeah.
And because people's travel habits have changed, we're more accessible as well to them because they just want to get where they're going. You know, Euston Station at the minute, I kid you not, Wednesday, you know, late afternoon, the queue was all the way back to the zebra crossing constantly for about 2 hours. Yeah. And also the problem is we have such few ways into these mainline stations now that we can't service them quick enough either. That's a problem.
No, the accessibility into the stations is a problem. Getting out of Euston, the way it's set up with, you've got the rank, the way it exits the station, and you've got the traffic that's dropped off, exiting the station out of a single lane that it doesn't stay green for very long.
Isn't this temporary rank system?
I believe so until the HS2 and everything's fully finished. But it's very rarely marshalled, especially at Euston.
Did you know the old rank?
Yes.
Yeah. You knew the old rank. So could you see that coping with this volume of people?
Because that exit to the station flowed a lot easier. And especially where the old rank underneath, it was 2 lanes eventually merged into 1.
Yeah.
So you could pull 4 or 5 cabs into that line, that single line, 4 or 5 people would jump in, the next lot of cabs would come in, they'd drive out.
Yeah.
Whereas the way the Euston station works now, people queue. They never queue to the front of the rank because of the way the railing's set. The railing's set about 3 spaces back. So there's never a cab on point at busy times. You've always got a cab pulling up, one person getting in and then joining the queue to get out. And like I said, it's very rarely marshalled, so you're relying on drivers to marshal it themselves. And the other day I actually got out at the station and had to say to the customers on point, just walk down, because when you walk down it allows 6 cabs to come forward. You can pick up 6 fares and they can go out and things will start moving a bit quicker.
But don't you find that frustrating? So for example at King's Cross, when there's a marshal, we use both lanes, but when there's no marshal, it's like the drivers have forgot that there's a second lane, and and I always go into the right hand queue when I get there, and I get out and call them over because I'm not doing anything wrong. But so many drivers just sit, and I'm just thinking,
do you know,
I think you use your head a little bit. You know, it's like they're fearful of offending another driver. But when there's 200 people in a queue, just take your pick.
Really matter.
Like, whatever job you get, you get. I mean,
you're not going to get to the front of the rank and there's going to be a £100 job sitting there. Well, those jobs coming out of Euston are going to be £15 jobs or £20 jobs. So, you know, you get to the front of the rank, get your job as quick as you can and get out of there. And these drivers are afraid of upsetting other drivers. They're hanging back on the rank because he's behind a cab that's 4 cabs to the left of him. So I can understand, you know, you do take a note of the reg of the cab.
Don't they just pull up? I'd pull up to the front of my second column. I'd get out my cab and stand by the cab and just wait for the cab that's going to pull beside me. That's my number.
Yeah, I mean, if drivers are willing to do it, the best thing to do would be to get out and say, customer here, customer there, customer there, next customer.
You could become the marshal.
Yeah,
I could go. I'm there. I'm 10 cabs earlier than I should be. I can marshal for 10 cabs.
Do it. Yeah, it's
but also then what happens is if you go in the left-hand lane at Euston and you're sitting there telling customers, no, you can't come to me. The look of confusion on their face, they're like, why don't? So then they become a bit questioning what you're doing. Then they could start questioning, is this like he don't know, he's waiting for a big job. You know,
you need a little bit of forwardness.
They just need marshals at these stations at peak hours. I don't know who pays them. I'm guessing
it's Network Rail.
Paddington works well. Paddington works well, but Paddington works well, in my opinion, because you've got a long distance between when you exit the rank to get out onto the main road. Euston is shocking because you can only get 2 cabs out in the rank until you're at the lights at Euston.
Yeah, especially if you've got the left and the right lane both trying to exit at the same time. He lets that cab go and then he pulls in and then the light's red and then you're queuing again.
I can't remember the last time I've ranked at St Pancras. I hate
St Pancras
ranking at St Pancras station. I know it sounds terrible because there's probably customers waiting for me and others, but I genuinely, I detest going there. I detest trying to exit there. The traffic out onto Euston Road out of there is shocking.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be 4 lanes coming out of there.
What's it now then?
2. Is one right
2
and one
lanes,
left.
because of the bike lane.
Yeah, so you know that flow, it's getting people around, and you could be on £7 before you get onto Euston Road. You know, you pick someone up at St Pancras.
You know, people probably think I'm mad, but the amount of times I've restarted my meter before.
I understand that
through sheer embarrassment of it's cost me £5 to get out of Euston Station. I genuinely, people probably think, what, he's mad, but genuinely, because my mindset is, if a customer has one bad experience with a cab driver, or has one fare where it's ludicrously expensive, or they look at that meter and haven't been onto Euston Road yet, I know it's not the driver's fault. I get that. But although we're all self-employed and we're all individual, people put us under the same umbrella. Yes. If they have one bad experience, price-wise or whatever it may be, they will go, all black cabs are.
I think you'd be surprised. I think a lot of cabbies would do exactly the same. I've done the same many times. Anytime you feel that just didn't work the way I wanted it to work, and anytime you get locked into somewhere, it's just horrendous.
I think you have to be flexible when it comes to, you know, we're all out there to earn money and take money home to our families, but at the same time, if it's for the sake of knocking £2 off of a fare to make the customer happy, that then reflects the trade in general very well. I think it just comes down to basic etiquette.
But this was always the point back in the day, is we could afford to do it. We could afford, when the money is good and we're okay what we're earning, we can afford to put something in it. But when you get desperate times and you suddenly think that extra £5, you know, I imagine during COVID that the people were just trying to take everything they could, every single penny out of the game they could.
Yeah, but again, that comes down to flexibility. So for me, again, during COVID, I generally did everything on a fixed fare. Anyone that contacted me on my Facebook of local areas where I lived, or Twitters and things, everything was fixed fare, because why wouldn't I? Like you said, it would have been a case of me going into work and scratching around. So, so the private jobs got me through a hole. It made the customer happy that I was there to offer that service, and they were used to being in a black cab again.
You done well during COVID.
Yeah, I did. I had 2 jobs every day. I had Romford to Liverpool Street, and then I'd go out to Harrow Road, West 2 area, and bring another of his colleagues back to Liverpool Street, and then I'd pick them up in the afternoon, take them back home again.
How much of that was luck or your own ingenuity?
It was through advertising through Facebook, local Romford Facebook groups, you know, which my Mrs. Jodie she'll take claim for suggesting it, but it was a great idea. And then out of that, I got elderly people to hospitals. I got a young lad.
So it springboarded you to other?
Yeah, massively. I just take a guy who had a lung transplant every other day, every other week into Royal London Hospital. I was taking elderly people's pets to the vet because they were shielding. So the dog had to go to a vet. They bring it out in a little cage, leave it on the doorstep. I'll take it to the vet, bring it back. So things like that, which I would never dream of doing now, although I probably would, because if somebody approached me and said, do you want to do this? I think it's, I don't want to sound dramatic, but I think we are such an important, integral part of London.
Yes.
And I don't care what people say when they go, what, like a telephone box, you know, which are no longer really existing apart from photographs. We're more than that. We are a part of London's fabric. We are tradition. We are history. But we're also an important part going forward, because the more we do for the customers is the more we keep the trade in the good light.
Yes.
And I've always found that tourists seem to appreciate us far more than born and bred Londoners.
Yeah.
In the main, not always. Americans absolutely love us because they know what their service is like in New York with the cabs. They compare us.
That's why Uber done so well in the US, is because the cab service was never very good to begin with.
Yes, and the same in Turkey. I got told the same, but although they got banned in Turkey because it can be more like the French militant reaction to it. But in Turkey, I was speaking to all my friends about why they would use Uber. They could see who the driver was, which they couldn't anywhere else. They could see the fare was going to be Google mapped and whatever it was, and the yellow taxis, which I've never been ripped off by in the yellow taxis because I've only done journeys which I knew the journey from, but lots and lots of people have had problems with the taxis. So it is you can start to understand why in other countries there is success, which is quite scary for us that we kind of had to battle that ourselves. I do think that our attitude, driver attitude, everything had to come up, had to raise their game. There used to be thingy.
Definitely. Because we had you know, when I first started driving, like I was saying, there wasn't an Uber. Drivers took that for granted.
Yes. How many fares are still refusing fares, but they would have been refusing fares more so.
Yeah, definitely. And then when Uber became popular, it didn't matter what the fare was, you were doing it because you just wanted the job at that point. But I think some of Uber's popularity was probably down to the taxi trade to some point, to some degree, because we gave them a lot of free publicity unnecessarily.
Yes.
And have you heard of the Streisand effect? So years ago there was a coastal erosion survey that someone was doing, and they took a picture accidentally from a helicopter or something of Barbara Streisand's house, and no one knew it was her house. And the erosion survey got posted online. It had very, very few views, maybe less than 10 or 20 views online, until Barbara Streisand said, "That's my house." And then all of a sudden, the views, the clicks went through the roof, and she took the person to court. And no one knew it was her house until she came out and said, "That's my house." And it's a similar sort of thing with regard to Uber. It was in London and it was being publicised and people were getting in Ubers. But then the taxi trade came about and said, "You've got to do something about this Uber situation." And we gave them a lot of free publicity unnecessarily. If we'd have just kept our heads down and
concentrated on our own job,
and exactly that, concentrated on what we were doing, and maybe smartened up a little bit and were you know, willing to be a little bit more flexible on fares if something didn't work out correctly, we might have weathered the storm a bit better.
definitely would have. I absolutely think we would have.
I mean, there is that, and I understand what you're saying. I don't disagree, but I do understand people's frustrations, drivers' frustrations, who put all that effort into the knowledge.
It's fear, though, John, isn't it? It's fear.
It is a little bit of fear, but I understand the fear, because if you work so hard to achieve something and then all you see is the potential of someone coming in through the back door and getting the very same privileges as you, which they never had, but technically you could say, well, it's like a phantom street, whatever you want to call it in the app. I sort of get people's frustrations, but I agree with you. People did go overboard with the amount of advertising they did, you know, to some extent.
What about the verbal abuse, in the sense that I used an Uber the other day? I haven't, I'm just saying an example. I used an Uber the other day and the guy ripped me off and and then the response from a taxi driver could be, "Well, you silly cow, you shouldn't have got in the Uber in the first place," rather than saying something courteous.
Massively.
You know, if you'd have got a black cab, it would have cost this, and we're glad to help you, please.
A lot of that is Cabbie Twitter. It is. It's some of the stuff that cab drivers put out there on Cabbie Twitter is questionable.
Yeah, I mean, that's social media in the main across the board, though, isn't it? People have got they've got a voice that they can promote and they can hide behind an avatar, possibly. And some people, I've seen some very extreme comments in the past aimed at Uber users. I don't really see it anymore as much.
I think that's it.
I think it's calmed down to some extent.
But isn't it our job to also kind of police this, in a sense that don't interact with these people that are on our feeds? We're not part of them. Block them if we can, but also don't be quiet ourselves with trying to articulate better arguments. So I'm always a fan of, you can tell me what you want, your opinion, but you can't just start saying, "Oh, you're an idiot," as your winning argument.
Yeah.
You've got to tell me the facts and details of what your argument's better. And that's what we had a lot of, is like, in the end, it could get to violence, sort of, and threats. These people could not articulate an argument to put their point across. And I'm thinking it's changed a bit. I'm thinking that we're being more thoughtful. There are more people in the trade that are being more thoughtful about what we need to say.
I think it's been a slow process, but I definitely think now there's more drivers that are aware that what they're saying doesn't necessarily promote the trade in a good way. So I think it has been a slow process. It's taken some time. But I definitely think now drivers are up in their game to a point where they're...
There was a string vest driver yesterday.
It's vest season.
Yes, it is
vest season. I've seen a few,
But, you know, you have to go... I'm not even a fan of the kind of sleeveless Lonsdale kind of thing either. It's like, it's so bad. A T-shirt, absolutely.
I think a polo is like the minimum for me.
Yeah.
In this heat, maybe a plain white T-shirt.
Something soft and light, yeah.
I mean, we don't...
It's individual, isn't it?
We don't always go to work looking like we're going to, you know, a wedding or, you know, super smart shirt and tie. It's not necessary, but I definitely think some drivers could
you know, I
improve their image.
think it has improved. I mean,
It's
you go back 30 years and a string vest was standard attire for lots of people. Now, if we see it, that person should be ridiculed and really told, I think you should go home. I think you should be arrested, told to go home and change and come back to school when he's got the right uniform.
On UCG Up on Twitter, you can go on as a driver and it would, you know, it's reliable.
That's a good feed, that, actually.
Yeah, so you can go on and as a driver, send them a picture of your badge and bill, and they'll let you on. It's a private feed, and it's run by drivers. So you send a direct message. If there's a queue of people at Euston, you can say queue of people at Euston, put the timestamp.
This is a United Cabbies group.
Yeah, UCG Up. So UCG updates.
I think it is,
yeah, so you can go and send a direct message, and it goes out on the feed. Now, if you turn on your notifications for UCG Up, anytime a driver posts a tweet, you can see that. So if you're nearby to Euston Station and there's a queue of people and a driver's there on the rank saying 10 people at Euston, you can quickly head to Euston. You know there's jobs waiting.
That's excellent, isn't it?
So it's you are relying on drivers, and some drivers
keep it to themselves.
Well, I mean,
some drivers don't share nothing.
Really?
No, I mean, I haven't posted anything on there in a long time. I am conscious of being on my phone whilst I'm driving.
Yeah, true.
That's another subject we can get onto. But there's abbreviations on there as well. So Euston Rank, the old rank, used to be called Sports Direct. So if there was a queue of people at the Euston Rank, the nickname on UCG Up was Sports Direct because of the way that the drivers that dressed that worked that rank.
I don't know why.
You know, it's just cab drivers. Okay. So if there was a tweet that come out that said queue of people Sports Direct, you knew they were talking about the Euston Rank. So, you know, it gets around among drivers, and drivers are aware of how other drivers dress and how other drivers
I think
act.
what you said a minute ago is interesting in terms of you think the drivers have upped their game. I think the drivers have upped their game, but I also feel now a lot of the public are sort of happy to see you. Mm-hmm. And that's genuine. I've had so many people, like women, at night, and they go, "Oh, I'm so happy I've seen you." And I make a joke like, "No one said that to me for a while," you know. And I think the public now are, I think to some extent, they've realised what they could have lost to some extent. And I genuinely believe that. I think they took us for granted a lot. I do. I think a lot of people used to make comments like, "Oh, black cabs are dear." When you prodded a lot of these people, I'm talking friends of friends, they'd never been in a black cab.
Didn't know. No.
But their assumption that we were ridiculously dear was based on a story that they heard down the Dog and Duck pub the other day. And I just think people's opinions of us is so, again, out of date. Play golf 8 days a week. You know, people say to me, "Do you play golf?" I say, "I can't stand the sport."
Yeah,
and they're like, "What? You're a cabbie? You don't play golf?" And I'm like, "No, and I don't have a place in my bio, and I don't work 3 days a week." And you know, stereotypes, you know, they're always going to stick to some extent. And I think that the 2 years that we've gone through as society, and the way drivers have upped their game, and the way people's travel habits have changed, I think a lot of people are genuinely happy to get in a black cab now, and the price is the price.
Yes,
to some extent.
Oh, very much cheaper as well. If you remind people that if you're 5 in a cab, it's cheaper than a train.
Yeah,
pretty much on any journey in the West End, it's cheaper than the train fare. I'm going to plead my ignorance. I'd use my Oyster card, and I don't really know how much it's taken off, but I think it's £3 something, isn't it? A fair.
It goes up to a maximum of like 12 quid, which is a daily travel card, I think.
So if you know, during COVID, if I was getting the train to jobs, I would actually drive to a station where I could tap in on the Oyster, and it was, you know, a return, couple of trains in, couple of trains out was 9 or 10 quid.
Yeah.
So.
Getting on to your thing about that WhatsApp thing, that was very good. And Mike Hughes, do you remember Mike Hughes?
Yeah. Poppy Cabs.
Yeah, Poppy Cabs. He used to always put up nice little tweets. He'd remind you, basically, because I was useless when the theatres were turning out. I could be driving 2 streets away from the theatres and you go in the wrong direction.
Yeah, UCG do that. So when there's busy times or there's a lot of events on, they will pin a tweet that will give drivers all of the finish times of all of the events. So they are good. They are good at doing
We
that.
didn't used to, for example, when those theatres used to churn out pre-technology, that would take longer to clear because those people would come out of the theatre, everyone wants a cab within 5 minutes and it's not there. Yeah. Whereas now I imagine we can all clock on, whoever's nearby, that would clear in seconds.
I've got another controversial comment. I've never worked the theatres. I can't stand the theatre area because every cabbie and their dad's there, you know, it's just like... And I just think, if I go somewhere else, think outside the box, I'll stay in the city, and I'm still as busy. Because every cab is in the West End.
It's difficult now to even get out of these places. And getting out.
Yeah, once you're trapped into something, you just keep going.
If you're in Covent Garden, you're in there.
But that UCG up is brilliant because it tells you all the stuff, you know, because some of the big venues at the minute are a little bit out. Yep. So you've got that Aber Voyage thing happening over by Stratford, Westfield.
So this
is busy.
Let me just promote that then. So the UCG up
at
on
UCG
WhatsApp.
Up.
No, it's on Twitter.
On Twitter. And you have to show your bill and badge.
Yeah, you send them a direct message, photo of your badge and bill.
And they'll let you on the group.
Accept you on it. I think there's about 4,500 drivers on there at the minute.
I mean, you have to rely on drivers obviously putting information in. And I'm guilty of not putting as much information in as I should. And I haven't tweeted anything on there in a while.
Yeah, but like you said, you can't get caught on your phone. You can only do it at the right times. You can't sit there going like that. I mean, I don't even have my phone on the dashboard.
Yeah. It's important to be...
The temptation of it, you know what I mean, of doing that.
It's important if you are using it to be specific because you will see tweets from drivers saying huge queue at, could be anywhere, 5 minutes later, queue gone. Yeah. So if you are using it, just be specific. Give it a ballpark, 10 people waiting, 15 people waiting.
Right. So the huge queue to one person is 5 people.
Yeah.
Or they could be sending a complete red herring.
Like yesterday was a good example. I saw one saying that Marylebone Station was closed. Huge roaders. That's what the tweet said. So
he was straight there.
Well, I wasn't too far away, so I drove there, and there was 5 cabs on the rank. So you know there was 150 people outside the station, but there wasn't a queue for taxis. So the station had been evacuated.
I think you know what that UCG up thing's good for? Because London's expanding, it's growing outwards again, right? Like, you know, like before, there was no Canary Wharf and that, you know, when we was kids. Now there's Canary Wharf and obviously... But now, like, Stratford Westfield is massive. There's so much going on over there and events. Now this Aber Voyage, I'm getting some great work out of there, which I didn't know was on. Until I looked on UCG Up, I didn't know Aber were doing a thing over there. It's great for the O2 Dome because there's a lot of events on over there. It tells you... So it gives you the opportunity, if you get a job late at night-ish out a bit, to think... Where am I going to go now?
You
come same as Printworks. If you get a job to Bermondsey or somewhere southeast, and you know Printworks is on, you get some good work out of there, and it's not like there's a ton of hotels. So if people are coming in for an event at Printworks, 9 times out of 10 they're going kind of back into town. But going on to covering the work at the O2 and ABBA, something I did want to talk about was the Heathrow tag situation. So you know. Heathrow at the minute is quite busy. There's a lot of people coming in. And I know it's something that me and you have spoke about.
Well, you got information and I've got information, which is interesting.
Do you want to go first?
Well, okay. Well, my impression, my urban legend was that they had capped it. That you're not going to get a badge. We've capped it. We only want so many people, and that was it. But what I was speaking with Steve McNamara the other day is that it wasn't capped at all. And I tried to think how this could possibly happen, but the badges had run out. And the only thing I can think of is during COVID, a lot of technology was really hard to get hold of. Supply chains diminished. So that takes it back 2 years, 2.5, maybe 3 years. Right. Can we go back to the beginning?
So my understanding was, and this was from drivers that regularly work the airport, is that Heathrow got to a point where it was oversubscribed. I mean, pre-COVID, the average wait for a job was 3 to 4 hours.
Right.
That was standard. When I first passed that, over 11 years ago, 2 hours was standard. So it doubled in 10 years. So I can understand their reasoning if they were going to cap tags, because there was plenty of driver service in the airport. There was no need for any more drivers. Yeah. And if it is a case that they simply ran out of tags, I don't understand why that isn't public knowledge, or why it wasn't made clear at the time.
Now we don't know exactly what the truth is, do we? Because it's kind of, is it this or is it that?
Yeah, no one I spoke to, or no one I know, until you said it to me yesterday, had ever put it to me that they simply ran out of tags.
Yeah, physically ran out.
Ran out of tags. That it never even crossed my mind, because going to the airport, 4-hour wait for a job, you don't need any more cab service in the airport. And what a lot of people don't understand is the drivers that work Heathrow, the majority will only work Heathrow. They will do a job.
Yes.
Doesn't matter where it's going, they'll go back to the airport. That's what they do. They don't work town, they just work Heathrow. And if it is a case that it's simply, they had a box of tags, the box ran out, and that was it, they're not issuing any more, I don't understand why that wasn't made aware to drivers. But it was probably a nice coincidence that COVID happened, so they didn't have to start issuing.
It could have been
tags.
a way of spinning it to suit the situation as best to calm it down.
Yeah, it could have been.
But apparently the badges are coming in July.
Yep.
Again, technology is actually still hard to get hold of. I've tried a few things myself. Supply chains all over the world are a disaster. You can pick a camera online and it's telling you you'll get it in 6 months, whatever it is that you're trying to get. But I did wonder about these tags, that the kind of technology they're using there should have had multiple places.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, the tags aren't particularly high tech tags. So you just put a bit of credit on, you go up to a reader, it reads the tag, it lets you through the barrier. Yeah. So it's not
credit card size ones, are they now?
Yeah, they're quite small.
Yeah, I've still got my old one. So
iZettle type card machine. Yeah. You know, they just sucker onto your window. They're not that big. But if they are going to start issuing tags in July, how they're going to start issuing them would concern me. If they're going to just open the book and give a tag to everyone who's got their name on a list, that could be quite risky. Heathrow operates on its own ecosystem. The taxi rank at Heathrow is its own thing. If you don't know how the system works, you don't understand the way local jobs work, or fair jobs work, or as simple as putting on your extras, you're going to have a lot of very green drivers going to the airport having no idea how the system works.
Yeah, but Nick, that's our entitlement, is to go there green or go there experience. A lot of people, in general, if we went there and we were green, you would take your time. You'd sit in the feeder park. You'd get some information. You'd be terrified. You'd learn your way. You take one job and you probably leave it a couple of weeks before you take another. Yeah, probably. My way of working the airport was always, if I got a fare there, I ranked up there and I got a fare back, but I never worked the airport. Being East End based people tend not to work the airport, and the guys working and living in Hounslow are all going straight on there and ranking up. But I did like to work the airport. It was always nice.
It's good to understand how it works, and I had no interest in getting a tag.
You haven't got a tag?
I have got a tag, yeah.
Have you got a tag, John?
I've never had no interest in having one.
I didn't have an interest.
I don't ever want to work it, so...
Until a friend of mine who does work the airport said to me, you should get one and just know. Because at certain times throughout the year, there will be what they used to call code red, where there would be no cabs. You could drive straight into a terminal.
Yeah,
you didn't have to go through the feeder park.
Times, yeah.
So that did happen. And it was I'd go on there maybe 10 times a year. It wasn't a lot. But I think there's definitely been...
You wasn't an avid airport sort of ranker, was you?
No, I wouldn't purposely drive out there without a job to put on.
I know people that do. I know people that drive from Essex and they jump on the M25.
Well, they might do.
And go straight to Heathrow.
Yeah, they might.
But that's
do.
up to them. But it's just never appealed to me. I think, for me, if I get an airport job to Heathrow, it'll take me half an hour and I'm back in Hammersmith or something.
It's
working again. So for me,
you have to weigh that up. You always had to weigh that up.
Yeah.
But the weigh up could be the fact that I can sit and have 2 hours off, have something to eat, have a break, depending on what sort of shift you've just put in.
Yeah.
And you're going to probably get 60 quid. So you might get £30 an hour. You might get 90 quid, £45 an hour, depending on the job you get. So you can balance that out and think, I'm probably going to go back to Hammersmith hunting for jobs. Yeah. And I'll get this, take my chances, and I'll have had a rest.
I think a lot of the interest in getting tags now is because drivers know that the airport is busy.
It's a busy terminal.
So if you don't have a tag, it's like the gold at the end of the rainbow. Like, you want to get there because you want that £260 job up north or whatever it might be. But not every job is like that. You hear about all these good jobs. Oh, my friend had a job to Dover or whatever it might be. But if you get a job to Harrow that goes £55, you're going to think, why have I just sat on that rank for X amount of time? Now, if it's doing 30 minutes, which it has done recently, you can afford to take that £55 job and go back if you wanted and wait another 30 minutes for a job. But if you'd waited 4 hours for a £55 job, you know, these drivers now that want tags that don't have them, if they were doing 4 hours for a £55 job, they'd have no interest in going there.
No, so it'll pan itself out.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people that will sit there for the 4 hours on the fact that they're not driving or doing anything.
Yeah.
They'll do that one fare, so it's a very little bit of a work regime. And they might do 2 fares a day and end up with their £110 or whatever it is, and then they go home. So it depends on
what you want to earn.
Yeah.
It also depends on what life you've got at home. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but again, I have to get home and do a lot with the kids and mix and match. So I'm quite an impatient person anyway. I don't rank I very rarely rank anywhere unless it's spinning. I don't rank.
Did you hear about the sleepers at the airport? You know about?
I've heard about those.
Did you hear about the sleeper who wanted to put a hammock in the back of the electric cab?
You can fit him in a Vito from corner to corner.
Yeah, Vito. Well, the guy done it in the electric cab and cracked the glass roof.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it was pulling down on it. I mean,
I have seen a Vito at Heathrow that has a microwave in the boot. Yeah. I mean, these are guys that are committed to work in the airport. Yeah.
They've got a canteen, haven't they?
They do have.
Saves them £4, though, isn't it? Better sound.
Canteen, yes.
It wasn't great, was it? I've never been there, but I heard.
Yeah, I mean, you can survive.
It used to be great.
But what a lot of these drivers do that sleep at the airport is they join the Marriott gym across the road and they go in and have their gym and their sauna and their shower and go back to work. That's what they do. That's their system. They'll go Monday to Friday and they'll go home the weekend.
It just sounds quite
and that's
boring.
just what they do.
It sounds so boring, though.
It's its own little thing. This is what I'm saying. It's its own little.
I'd rather be busy and doing loads of jobs. You know, I'd rather keep busy. £10 jobs, £10 jobs.
Yeah, everyone's different. Everyone's different.
I get that.
If you work the airport, you either work the airport Monday to Friday, or like me, you go out there, you drop off, and like you used to, you put on.
I think we're the same. I would look at the rank. The rank was had cabs on it. I'd be driving. I would always be looking for my passengers rather than sit and wait. Unless I was really, really tired, then I'd just go home. So yeah, I'd like to always keep moving.
It's a bit like ranks in general. Like I find it fascinating when King's Cross rank is all the way up and onto York and onto up by Granary Square. And I'm not saying it is these days, but I remember when I first got out, I could never fathom why you would join the back of the rank for King's Cross when it was on York Way. I was like, I used to drive past thinking, am I missing a trick? But I was thinking, I cannot look at 80 cabs in front of me and I'd be like that. You know, I'd be like, oh my God, I have to go. I say to my mate, I like to go fishing. I'm not going to go where every fisherman is passed in the same area. I'm going to drive around and look for work.
A lot of cabbies that have passed that recently will never know the Paddington Station rank starting on Harrow Road. Starting at the Metropole. That is where the back of the rank was. You know, and you're only going back 5 years.
Yeah, well, when I got out,
So if you wanted to join the Paddington Station rank, it was at the Hilton Metropole. So, and the King's Cross rank on Goods Way was a regular thing. Yeah. So, you know, it's
a funny thing as well.
But that's something you learn. When you get out, you learn how these things work.
Yes.
So if you get a feel for what ranks move and what ranks don't. But that's just something that comes with time and experience.
Hopefully you learn how it works without getting abused by another driver for making a mistake of pulling onto the wrong place.
Well, I had a young kid the other day. He was fresh out like a week and he came into Euston. He dropped off at Euston and I was on the rank at Euston and he pulled up next to me and he was all like, and he went, mate, do you know, how do I use this rank? And I explained to him, I said, come around. And that's what you want. Like, I'm not saying I'm brilliant for doing that, but you don't want drivers, especially these, because I've noticed a lot of really young drivers lately, the new ones, young.
But it just takes a driver
to help them.
Yeah. And that, I mean, it's interesting that you don't learn these things until you get your badge.
No.
You get your badge and then you learn how to drive a taxi. You learn how all these little things work. And the way I learned was other drivers, most of the time, unfortunately, they weren't overly polite in the way they said things.
I think I always was.
Wrong,
I think you always would be.
Yeah, if I see something and I can see it's a new driver, you know, some drivers try it if they've lost a badge and they've got a replacement and they appear new,
and they're not.
They may be trying.
They tell you. They put formally.
Yeah, I've heard about this formally yesterday. Really, they're so ashamed. It's so heartbreaking for them. Yeah. That's why I got onto the bucket idea of dipping your hand in the bucket to take a badge, because
that was an old one,
it would have been nicer than appearing like I've been out 30 years and I've got an 80000 badge.
I'm not being horrible to anyone that does that. If anyone watches this, I'm not trying to offend you, but I can just imagine there's other drivers and they see formerly 610 and they go, "Hey, I've just found him. I've been looking for you. He's 61806.
You know what's
I
funny?
found him."
If you haven't lost your badge and got a replacement, every driver thinks the same. Yeah. Whenever you see formerly whatever, every driver thinks the same thing.
I wouldn't have formally. I'm sorry.
I would not have formally. Swallow your pride. Don't be so egotistical. You got a badge number, and it doesn't mean anything now. In a sense, you know, with people losing their badges so often, it's kind of you can never know when someone's got out.
No.
If they look very young, maybe you can presume they're fairly new. In terms of the rank ones, my story on the rank ones is the Hilton Park Lane. And when you come down Park Lane and you swing left back up Park Lane to be outside the Hilton on the right, so the rank is just there. There's one cab on the rank, so I pull in behind him. You know the rank feeds across from the other side of this.
But the casino is ambassadors, isn't it?
But something that a lot of drivers that they might have been driving for years, they don't know that the front of every rank is technically its own rank. So you could be at the break in the rank at King's Cross or the Hilton Park Lane,
and they can take you before or after the break.
In point, on point of that particular rank. You can say, no, I'm feeding down, or you could take the job and the driver on point then can't be annoyed at you. But going back to what I was saying, it takes other drivers to show newer drivers how things work.
Politely,
yeah. There's if someone does something wrong, I've many times pulled up next to a driver and said, look, next time you shouldn't do that, or just be aware there's a rank there. So like if you are taking real liberties, picking a job up that's close to rank. Now, we all make mistakes, and I have definitely picked up too close to rank and not realised there's a cab on point. But if that driver then gets out and starts screaming and shouting, you're instantly on the defensive. If you make the mistake, and I have made the mistake of picking up too close to a rank and not noticed the cab or been in a world of my own, the driver comes out and says, mate, look, we're sitting on the rank there. All right, I'm really sorry. Take the job. Explain to the customer, look, I'm really sorry. That cab was on point. Do you mind just getting out and getting in his cab? But there's a way of doing things.
What about Sloane Square? How are you going to do that?
Sloane Square, if it was me, I would still approach it the same. That if you're at the front of one of the breaks in that rank, you are eligible to take a job.
So the rank is basically feeding Sloane Square Station, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you come down to King's Road and you turn left and right into Sloane Square, and someone's on the left, not on the island.
Oh, if someone flagged you off the street?
Yes.
If someone flagged me off the street, I would point them to the rank.
No, yeah, I would.
Yeah, but if I was on the rank, then I think the same principle applies as any rank, where if the rank, there is a clear separation and the markings finish. I mean, this is really nuanced stuff, and you can, when you're out there working, you've got to, kind of see it for what it is and be able to judge it. You've got to be, again, flexible.
So I flag you down, okay, and I'm standing on that corner, and you say, you need to go over the road there, mate, and get the cab from there. I ain't crossing the road. I don't want to cross the road.
Then you have to interpret that situation and say that he doesn't want to cross the road. I would, in that situation, more than likely say, all right, if you don't want to cross the road, jump in. If they're unable to cross the road, for example, you can't force them to cross the road. You can't.
But you do know that the passenger can actually pick any cab anywhere on the rank, whether they want.
But, years ago, before there were TXCs and Vitos, and I had a plain black TX1, I would have that had a card machine as well, because the card machines weren't in every taxi. You could be 10th back on Paddington Rank. Someone's just come in on the Heathrow Express, and they would walk past 10 cabs that didn't take card, or they didn't like the look of, and get in a plain black taxi. It wasn't uncommon. So
well, you've opened up another can of worms on the old station ranks. So you're sitting on third on point, and then someone comes out and you see him talking to the driver, and all of a sudden they're speaking to the second driver, and then they're speaking to you, and they say, I want to go, for example, we're at Waterloo Station and I want to go to the Firehouse restaurant. And you think, okay,
Chiltern Street.
No, sorry, the fire station.
Fire station.
Road, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
the old
sorry.
fire
Is it called fire station or firehouse? I'm not sure. But we all know what we mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
But the point is now, that's not fair on me. I'm the third in the rank. I'm taking my potluck lottery ticket, and that guy at the front there has broomed it all the way back to me.
Do you know what? In that situation, I would say, I'm really sorry that those two drivers didn't want to take you. Jump in, I'll take you.
Yeah.
Because the amount of times that someone has come to the cab and apologised for it being a short journey, and you drop that job off, and there is an excellent job there waiting for you.
But the short journey, you don't mind if you've not waited for it. I'd picked any journey.
Yeah,
But if you sat on that Waterloo Rank for maybe 20 minutes.
But my take on it is, and I'm sure most drivers, you guys are the same, you get what you're given.
Absolutely.
You like you said, if the first two refuse that £4 job, I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
Because they represent, like I said, they
represent
represent
the
me.
absolutely. Yeah.
So you are potentially damaging our industry as a whole, right? By being negligent, I'm not doing that or whatever. I'll take any job. I genuinely take any job.
Absolutely.
And to be honest with you, again, I'm not trying to sound like a martyr. I always try and give one job away a day because you always get that free £80 job and then they want £1 a card. I just think, what's the point?
Yeah,
So I just go have that one, mate, because I think it's a bit of calm, man.
But
like you said, you don't know what's around the corner
But then
either.
that goes back to what we were saying earlier on, where when you're driving, you have to just be aware of what's going on around you and interpret the situation for what it is. And it could be as simple as giving the fare away to Great Ormond Street. You know, if someone jumps in the cab and they're going to Great Ormond Street with their kid, you know, I would give the fare away. But what I saw recently was a driver complaining, saying that the people he dropped off, it was almost like they was expecting it to be free.
Yeah.
That's what he was saying. And he was then reluctant to give it away for free. Now, it's not written in law. You don't have to give that fare away.
No, that's
it's
what
a
we
nice
discussed,
gesture.
yeah.
It's a nice gesture. Because I know from personal experience, going to the hospital with your kid is difficult.
Yeah.
So if you get that nice gesture on the way in or the way out, that's something nice that can brighten up your day. But you
more than brighten up your day, Nick, as well. We're giving away the fare sometimes to our first fare. We donate. These things, all these things that we're doing as perks to Great Ormond Street, certainly your experience is super personal. Your son is going to Great Ormond Street, having special treatment, and right now you're telling me he's having a drug that's super expensive, super exclusive, is being given to Parker. We're contributing towards that. This is the reason we should be doing things like this for Great Ormond Street. Regarding the complacency of passengers going there, I really think it's our discretion as drivers. I'm not going to give someone who's complacent. I'm giving people the fare for free because this is us, like you did with the fare for free. This is us advertising us. We're giving out a good advert. But at the same time, all of us are aware of abuse. And as I said to you earlier, Nick, it's a lady with her child going to there. It's going to be free whether she's complacent or not. If it's someone who's showing us the fact that it's really taking us for granted, then you've got that discretion. Sorry, I'm not going to be giving that for free. It's not obligatory for me to give it to you for free. I would give it to you for free, but I expect a little modicum of decency.
I've never had anyone that I've taken there, even some of them don't seem like aware of that.
No, definitely.
Free fare. Every fare I've ever taken there, the person's tried to pay me.
Yeah, same.
And I don't know the rules on it in terms of, do you give it for free if they've got their child with them?
There is no rule.
No,
it's down to you.
That's what I'm saying. So sometimes I've had parents, they haven't got their kid with them, the kid's in the hospital, and you get talking to them, and you sort of, obviously the subject comes up, what you get. Once they tell you the story, if you're a father or a parent or a mother, it pulls on your heartstrings. So whether the child's with them or not, you know, just give it away. Like I genuinely think, you know, I say things like, I don't take it and give it to Great Ormond Street, but I say, they're staying in a hotel for the night and the kid's in hospital, I say, buy yourself a bottle of wine with the money or something like that. I know it ain't,
well, you know,
gestures are
I
grander,
think
but
you might have hit upon one subject here with the thing about the super huge queue at Euston and stuff like that, where it's an illusion. This guy's probably had one person get in his cab that was complacent, and now we've got this story about people wanting to pay get the fare for free for Great Ormond Street, and everybody's being complacent. And it could be like the Chinese whisper of exaggerations, where it's one person's been rude and overly expecting it for free. I have one student, Tony O'Leary. He's taken someone to Great Ormond Street, gave him the fare for free, and not only that, the woman lived in Croydon, always has trouble getting to Great Ormond Street. She's got disabilities that make it much more difficult. And another aspect of our trade is we are accessible to people with disabilities. He goes to Croydon now on call to collect her and take her whenever she wants for free.
wow.
So these are the things that we are kind of a little unsung about. We need to do promotional work. We need to make things better.
But I think that kind of promotional work works better when it is kind of low key.
Yeah, local. We are low key.
If that person then tells her friend, this cab driver does a really nice thing for me, and then word gets about, that's great. In terms of if it was something went viral, like a video went viral recently of a cab driver giving a fare away for free to Great Ormond Street, then there are, unfortunately, people out there
Question
that
it.
are going to take advantage. But that's just human nature.
You think because it was on social media that other people think, oh, you can get a fare for free. Well, there's always going to be a sick con man that will actually get in the cab and give the story. But that person's obviously one of life's.
And it's a minority, you know.
Yeah.
It is
You know what I've noticed since I've been a cab driver in 8 years, I was always been quite sceptical of the human race. Like, there's a lot more bad people out there.
Yeah.
But as a cab driver, I've been knocked once in 8 years.
Yeah.
By 2 women, 2 young ladies.
Always.
But I'll tell you what I've realised in the main is that the public and society, we're more
Pretty
good
good,
than
aren't we?
bad. I don't really have much trouble with people. I've never had an argument with anybody. I've never, maybe that's because I'm quite, when I get in the cab, I sort of don't fuel the fire and I won't bite back.
Yeah.
I'll take it a little bit. And I think the public generally now appreciate us more, for sure.
I think it's something to do with our job as well. If you separated us and said how much trouble do you get driving a minicab to how much trouble you get driving a black cab, statistically it's going to be quite low for us and much higher for them.
Yeah.
I think something you have to remember is when that person gets out of your cab, the likelihood of you seeing that person again is very small.
Well, talking of that, I dropped a guy off in Northumberland Avenue for a business meeting and then went about my business, done my whole job for the whole day, drove back down Northumberland Avenue, and he stepped out on the street and waved me down.
It has happened. It has happened. But
And he's like,
in
"What?"
general, you know, out of the thousands of jobs that you do.
Have you had it happen?
Yeah, I've had it happen. Yeah.
But that's also because we're creatures of habit. So what I mean is you probably
go to
go
the
in the
same
same
areas,
way.
yeah.
I come in the same way. I'm in Liverpool Street area. And you do sometimes. I've had it 2 days in a row, picked up the same guy, took him home. You know, that happens very rare. But, you know.
Majority of the time, you know, if it's a bad journey, a lady this week was complaining. She kept saying I've gone the wrong way, which it frustrates you. No, but I picked her up on Bond Street, New Bond Street, and she wanted to go to Edward Square. And she said, I don't want you to go down Kensington High Street. I said, okay. So she said, can you do Bayswater Road for me?
Yeah.
I said, okay, if that's the way you want me to go, that's the way I'll go. So I got there, and my plan was Bayswater, Notting Hill, Campden Hill Road, Argyle, do it right, Edward Square's on the left. And when we was going down Campden Hill Road, she was complaining. And she said, oh, no, I don't want you to use the high street. I said, but it's off of the high street, so we have to touch the high street. And what she actually wanted me to do was to go past it and come down, is it Pembroke Road?
Yeah.
And there's a way you can come into Edward Square from the back. But she wasn't overly specific, and in my mind, Edward Square was off of Kensington
Why
High
don't they
Street.
just start giving you directions from there? I do. You know where I live off Stainsby Road. I just tell the driver, Stainsby Road, if you know it, great. But when we get near it, left here, mate, right here, it'll make it easier. Jeez.
Yeah, but that's frustrating, though.
Yeah.
What is the...
But I'd already, but
If they don't know where it is.
No. When you have a fare, though, and you get them 90% of the way home, and then all of a sudden they
I know,
go,
so
left
then-
here, mate, right here, mate. And I'm like, we're there. I know where it is.
No, but I'm not going on the
I
basis
know,
that they know it is. If they don't, you can sense, because my street's a little bit tucked off, and it's just telling them, for a start, you have to know how to get into my street now, because it's turned into a cul-de-sac.
Changed, yeah.
So you've got to know the in and the out. So I had a very similar one to that with a complaint. So I had a fare from Waterloo Station to the Hilton Kensington, and this is before people had phones. So we came out and we went up Birdcage Walk, and we went around Queen's Gardens, up Constitution Hill, and then along Knightsbridge, Kensington High Street. We're just flying along there, and I would have done Kensington Church Street, Campden Hill Road, one or the other, something like that, feed it through. You're just going to do a left, it's on the left. It's easy. Couldn't be any more simple. And we got to Hyde Park Corner, and she went bananas at Hyde Park Corner when I left by Knightsbridge. She said, you don't know where you're going. I said, your hotel is up here. It couldn't be any easier. I said, when we get there, don't worry, ask the concierge. Just tell him you went past the Royal Albert Hall, and see what he says. You'll be fine. We came from Waterloo. And she said, no, this is definitely, the bus doesn't go this way. I know the bus doesn't go this way. What way does the bus go? I don't know. The bus obviously goes up Park Lane and does Bayswater Road, which would be lovely. I'd gladly go that way if you want. And when we got there, because again, I wasn't working fully, I did what you would have done. I just said, it's 20 quid or whatever it was. Don't worry about it. You obviously think I tried to take you away to earn more money out of you in some way. Don't worry about the fare. No, I want to pay you. No, you've already insulted me enough. Just take the fare for free and ask the concierge and tell him you went past the Albert Hall and see if he thinks you've come the wrong way from Waterloo Station. People.
I think it's being able to communicate with your passengers, definitely. You know, even if you haven't said anything to them for the whole journey, but you might have something that you need to explain to them. Say, listen, I'm doing this because this.
Yeah.
And that's as far as the conversation goes. But if you're able just to talk to your passengers and say, I'm going to do this because of this, this is the reason, then most of the time they're happy with that. It's okay, whatever you think's best.
Yeah.
And it works. And
100%.
And I think when you're doing the knowledge, you are great at passing appearances, and you're great at answering examiners' questions. When you start driving a cab, like I was saying, that is when you learn how to drive a taxi and how
we are
to
not
get
taxi.
people.
We're not training to be taxi drivers.
No, you're
at
training
all.
to pass the knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've always said that.
Yeah.
And it's something that, you know, now my knowledge is a working knowledge. It is, how do I get this person from point A to point B as fast as possible and get them out?
But you know,
That's what it is.
But you know, a bigger point of that is knowing to drop somebody. You know, like on the knowledge, you would know all the ins and outs of this. But when you're actually a working driver, you say, well, if I just drop you on Regent Street, if they're able to, if you walk there 2 minutes, it will save you £5 on the metre and another 20 minutes in the cab.
Yeah.
So,
and that's just being able to explain it to the passenger.
Yeah,
And being able to, you haven't got to be, you know, super articulate, but just being able to say to your customer, look, this is the reason, this is what I'm going to do. You happy with that? Most of the time, they're more than happy with, yep, fine, drop me wherever as close as you can. I'll walk 50 yards. You know, it's just. But
there is an element of trust. Most of the users of black cabs trust black cabs. That's the funny thing. But we only fixate on those that don't trust us or haven't, or think we're knocking them or ripping them off. But like you said, if you tell them at the start of the journey why you're doing something, you know, this is closed or there's a demonstration and that, they don't look it up on their phone. They're not going to investigate what you've said. They take your word for it, because I think most appreciate that the more jobs we do, the more we earn. There's no rocket science to that.
Well, I've covered this one before as well. I don't know of, there's going to be someone, but I don't know of any black cab driver that can consciously think of trying to rip you off. We're so geared towards giving our best journey. We think everybody knows what we know.
Yeah.
So to consciously think, how can I take this journey longer? It's
difficult.
It's hard to do.
Yeah, it is difficult. It is difficult. And I think sometimes you have to remember as well is that when you are driving someone from point A to point B, it might not look pretty on a map if you were doing the knowledge.
No.
But it goes back to just being able to get someone there as quick as possible.
I did have a cab driver once that we was coming down Westbourne Grove and we was going to Westminster Bridge, and I know that he didn't do anything on purpose, but as we came down Westbourne Terrace or Gloucester Terrace, we got to the bottom of Sussex Gardens. When we got to Sussex Gardens, we're obviously going to go out onto the Bayswater Road, but he didn't. He travelled up Sussex Gardens and then turned right into the Edgware Road to end up at Marble Arch. So we was basically at Bayswater Road to go to Marble Arch. And I thought, there's no green badge that would have consciously done that. That's a very strange mistake to kind of make. Yeah. I know he didn't do it on purpose. I just didn't check afterwards. I just paid the fare because it wasn't going to make much difference to the fare. But I did suspect a yellow badge might have done that one. A yellow badge might have mistakenly done that mistake, but not a green badge. Yeah. And again, it wouldn't have been deliberate. We couldn't do it.
I still find the one, especially with tourists, when you go over two bridges, the look of confusion on their face. And then you have to, like I say to them, the River Thames doesn't run in a straight line. I said it meanders quite drastically, and sometimes Lambeth and London works
nicely.
a lot. Again, it may not be pretty, it may be longer in terms of distance.
I don't think it would be.
Well, but also, but not just that. Now, if you go on the embankment west to east,
single lane
from Blackfriars Underpass onwards, it's awful. So for me, 9 times out of 10, it's Lambeth and London if they're going.
It's just going back to being able to explain that to your passenger, being able to say to your passenger, "Look, I'm going to go over Lambeth Bridge and London Bridge because." You know, and like I say, I've never had a customer say, "No, I don't actually want you to do that. I want you to sit on the embankment in traffic."
So to finish off, because I think we could actually talk for hours, and it actually has been excellent. If you was to recommend the job to someone now, would you say it's worth doing?
Yeah, 100%.
And you, John, you think it's
absolutely 100%?
Yeah,
in terms of freedom and being able to do the job as and when you want and work the job how you want to work it. There's very few jobs that.
If I wasn't doing this now, I wouldn't be able to invest the time into my kids that I do now. I would, if I still worked in the city 9 to 5, which pretty much always became 8 till 6. I would not have the flexibility. Some days are better than others. You never know what you're going to earn, but if you put the work in when you're as a cab driver, you will earn money. I know the X's are up and fuel's gone up. I get all that at a minute. I at the minute, fuel's killing people, and I get that totally. I'm not blasé about it, but for me, if I had to work 15 hours a day in a cab, I would.
Yeah.
Because I'm a cab driver now. That's how I see it. I've got no skills to go back on.
Yeah.
Nick's learnt a new trade to some extent now that he can fall back on. No, I'm being honest. Like, I don't have a trade to go back to. And I understand the guys that have gone back to their trades because of COVID and maybe haven't come back to the cab.
You don't blame drivers for doing that. You've got to do whatever's best for you at the time.
But if you can do it,
COVID was an extreme situation.
Yeah, but if I could, I passed the knowledge when I was 35.
Yeah.
I'd love to have done it when I was 21, 22.
Oh yeah, well, that's
with
the
no
dream.
responsibilities,
that's
with no
the position I was
kids,
in.
no living at home with your mum and dad. Yeah, with
living at
all
home.
due respect to you, I'm not saying it made it easier, but you had less to worry about.
How old are you, Nick?
21.
Yeah,
So,
he was
so
young.
it was great.
21, yeah.
So this is always been the thing that I'm trying to tell people. The ideal age to do this is probably one of the most difficult ages to do it. It's the youngest. It's the psychology of a young person to do this, but it's the absolute dream situation.
I mean, something that we can probably spend the whole podcast talking about is the barrier to entry argument gets brought up a lot. And because at the minute, maybe there is a shortage of physical taxis out there working, drivers give their badges back the last couple of years, there are people that are calling for the knowledge to be made easier or for there to be some kind of fast track system. But the only people that are doing that are people that aren't doing the knowledge now or have done the knowledge. It's people that are outside sources.
Can I expand on that a little bit? Because I don't want it to be sort of seemed... There's a guy here the other day, he passed out in 1982, Sylv, and he was lovely. And he said, really strongly, I don't want the knowledge to be easier. And I said, Sylv, how many appearances did you have? He said, I had 5. So what you mean is you don't want the knowledge to be made easier than 1982. Yeah. Because this is the point I think a lot of drivers are missing, even newer drivers. It's this escalation that we've seen of up and up and up and up. Turnarounds didn't exist in his day.
No.
From A to B was all it was. And there and thereabouts before then, it was hospitals and police stations. They've all gone, so you can't ask those anymore. So the volume of points from our freeze generation, we were asked some obscure points. That's changed a little to make it a little easier. So when we're saying make it easier, it's kind of, you got to dial back some of these things to just... And the biggest one, which we had success on, was the redlining, because the redlining was the absolute... You were just basically throwing that person off the knowledge. You're saying, oh, they can stay on it, but they have to persevere. No, you can't let me pass an exam and tell me I'm good enough for 28s and now say I'm not. And that's changed, which is lovely and does make it a lot more psychologically easier for people to maintain it. But yeah, wonderful. Sylvie was really strong. You don't make it easier. And he done the knowledge in 19 months and 5 appearances. Yeah. So it's not got any... His view was, lovely, really great talking with him. His view was that it actually is exactly the same now. It's just that we're not working as hard.
Yes, it's interesting. I mean,
it's interesting because
I've heard that from a few older
But
drivers.
as London continuously expands, there's new things to learn. So in fact, the newer drivers are learning new things. So what I mean is, you probably didn't have to learn the Canary Wharf area as much as it is. But if you go over, even now over Canary Wharf, there's little streets and roads off Canary Wharf that I've never heard of. And I've only passed out 8 years ago. I just think that the red line thing's fantastic, what you guys achieved. I'm sure when you worked here, we sort of overlapped each other. When I worked here, one of the hardest things to do was to try and encourage someone who'd been redlined to carry on. Because it's easy for you to say it after not being redlined, say, oh, you should carry on. That was one of the hardest things. And some really good people gave up the knowledge that I met in my time, and I'm sure you did as well. And it's a shame because they would have been fantastic drivers now. They would have been.
Yeah, the character was
there. They had the courtesy.
Yeah, they would have made good cab drivers, but it was that examination process probably wasn't.
Yeah,
wasn't
I mean,
right.
as we've all worked in this industry of teaching people the knowledge, we've all probably seen grown men cry.
Yeah. I mean, but you think back then as well, there wasn't a shortage of people doing the knowledge. So having the red line system in place, I'm not saying it in any way acted as a filter, but it was
supposed to, though, Nick. It was supposed to act as a filter. That was when we was going back to these ideas being introduced. There were 6,000 to 8,000 people on the knowledge. Now we're looking at 500 to 600 people on knowledge. It's an absurdity to sort of, you've filtered off all these people.
But you could do with them now.
They could do with them now.
This is the point.
Yeah.
And I think now the encouragement is key.
Yeah.
So if you're going to take away the red line, it's not making it easier. It's just saying to people, you will get there in the end.
Yes.
Like we used to say to people, if you carry on, you'll get there. Even if you get Redline, you'll still get there. This is now TfL saying, unless you're extremely ridiculously not investing your time into doing this, you will become a cab driver at some point. But I think that's brilliant.
Yes.
But it's not going to take long for you know, there's going to be a very short cycle of knowledge students before being redlined is completely forgotten about.
Yes,
So,
you're
it's
right.
just
Absolutely.
Now that's just the way it is. It's not going to take long for.
They still get red line, but not a level.
Right. Yeah.
So you can't go back a level. You just lose. So you can stay on 28s now forever, as long as it's. Well, they've given a time limit.
56s.
Yeah, they've given kind of a time limit of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years for certain things, and even then you go for a little meeting where they can say, "Look, this has been my situation."
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is a much better. I still don't think it's as good as my day, where you was on 28s, you was on 28s. When you're good enough, you'll be on 21s.
Yeah.
I don't see why that shouldn't be the case now. So again, you could argue, why should I lose any points? I've passed and I need to get 12. So why do I keep losing them and going back to square one? Yeah. And that was the argument. It's snakes and ladders. You're playing a game of snakes and ladders. It shouldn't be that way.
And you are just trying to get through those appearances. You know, doing the knowledge is all about passing your appearances.
And I think us as drivers now out there, you know, you've been a driver forever, me 8, you 11 years. I want cab drivers out there.
Yeah.
Because if there's not enough cabs out there, then the danger is that the public will go, I'll have to use that Uber.
It's not.
I'll have to download that Uber.
Do you know what?
It is that though.
It is. Yeah, that is.
So
a
I
point,
don't want. I'm not saying I want inadequate drivers coming through. I want drivers who are good enough, to come through. Yeah. The more the merrier, because they are not there taking my earnings away. They're there supporting my industry, because without them, what have we got? Yeah.
The way a point of view that I see it as well is that if there isn't the number of drivers there, you're going to go back to the old days of drivers taking full advantage of there being an abundance of work and driving along Oxford Street.
Well, that's where we've got to educate. I think we've got to educate on that one. You know, that becomes our job.
Yeah, I mean, you'd always hear stories of drivers driving from Marble Arch to Sonnet Court Road looking for that job, going in the direction they wanted to go home in. Yeah. Because drivers were taking full advantage of there not being enough drivers. Yeah. And I think that's a situation we're getting to, where if there is that shortage of drivers, you're going to go back to drivers taking advantage, and a lot of these new drivers won't know any different than how it is now. So they're going to come out and just think, well, that's how it is. I can tap my way down Oxford Street looking for a job going home. Whereas 5 years ago, pre-COVID, you couldn't do that. You know, there was
the old Liverpool Street and Charing Cross Station
Church Street.
Sit there with your light off and just wait for someone to come to your window.
Well, my mate used to just go along Charing Cross Station, pull over to one side, walk along all the queue of people waiting to get a cab, say, anyone want to go Cheam? And drag them out the queue and take them back to the cab. That sort of trickery is like a bit outrageous.
And you know, you can circle back and just say, look, it's reliant on drivers explaining to other drivers, especially new drivers, the etiquette and how things work. And
you've just got to keep the luck of the game, haven't you? I mean,
the
very same person I told you about, taking the person from the queue, his dad is also a taxi driver, and his mentality was the absolute opposite and perfect. Just one job at a time, take whoever you get. Don't put no thought into it. At the end of the day, I don't know if you've ever done this little experiment. We've done it a few times back in the day. You could all work 8 hours and you'll meet up at the end of the day and you'd be within £10 of each other. You're all like there or thereabouts.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter how well you start, but at the end of your 10-hour shift or 12-hour shift, you're more than likely.
Unless you had one of you might have had the lucky fare. Yeah. But in general, fares-wise, you're all on roughly about the same money per hour, per day.
Yeah.
I've always just done my hours and gone. You know that some people have a monetary figure that they want to get.
That's interesting.
Because I don't get that. I'm like, well, how long's a piece of string? How do you know how long it's going to take you? It could be a slow day. So for me...
Is that the only system you've done? Because I've done them all.
Pretty much, my hours are my hours. If I say I'm going at 12, I'm going to finish at 9, let's say, for example, right? Unless it's extremely ridiculously busy out there, I'll stay out. Yeah. But what I have noticed since COVID, because I wasn't doing the hours I used to do when I first got out, I was hungry. Yeah. Just go out and do 12-hour shifts, right?
You ain't got the stamina.
I ain't got the stamina. If I start at 10 in the morning now, 6 o'clock, I'm thinking, what time am I going to go?
6 o'clock in the evening?
Yeah.
I'm 10.
10, 11, I'm feeling tired because I've changed the way I work though. During COVID, because I had them private jobs, I was home by 4 every day.
Yeah, I was
that's just changed me a little bit. Do you know what I mean?
My meter went on to rate 3 last night, and it was like, I ain't been out on rate 3 in a while. You know, it's just.
But that's also could be because people are maybe because it is busy at the minute. Let's not lie, it's busy.
Yeah.
Maybe people are earning quicker and they can go home earlier.
What is
And
the
then
night shift like at the moment?
I haven't. Dean, the latest I've worked since COVID is about 10.
I mean, it got to a point the other night at 2 o'clock in the morning where I had to turn my light off and shut my windows.
Yeah.
Because you were batting people away. You know, sitting at Piccadilly trying to go
That is
through
like
the
the old
lights.
days. That's my days.
And they're like, please, will you just take, I'll give you extra.
Yeah.
You're like, mate, I
That's the
cannot
famous
drive.
thing now,
If I
isn't it?
drive you 30 minutes west, it's another 30 minutes back to here, and I've still got to drive home. I can't physically do it.
And I've made that mistake before. Left my, like, thinking about going home 1 a.m, left my light on around
If you're
Shoreditch,
thinking
Bock
about-
Park,
yeah.
and hands go, I thought, I'll take this one. They were standing at the bus stop going east on Bethnal Green
I want
Road.
to go Putney.
Putney High Street.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like-
the worst.
And I don't want to turn them down, and I've took them all the way back, and I've got...
Did you feel like saying to him, why are you standing on this bus stop?
Yeah,
Why are you
a
standing
little bit, yeah.
Why are you standing on that?
Yeah. We're all guilty of it, but if you're thinking about driving home, you've got to turn your light off.
I've refused one job ever. It was Blackfriars about a year into when I got out. It was about 2 a.m, so I was contemplating. I'd been driving to he wanted to go to Brighton. And
But you could technically refuse that. So.
No, but I didn't want to. So what I did was I went on that UCG up. That's another good thing it's for.
Yeah.
And I said, give me your number to the customer. Give me his number. I put his number on there. I sent a DM, took his number, sent him where he wanted to go. And some driver replied, said, I'll be there in 10 minutes. I waited with him. The driver gave me a tenner drink for saying thank you, and he took him home to Brighton.
Yeah.
So that's another thing for UCG up. That's good.
Yeah, that
You
must
get
be a
lot
driver
of-
lives in Brighton or down in
Well,
Hove
must
or whatever.
live that way. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't remember where he lived. Didn't ask him, but yeah, I just think that
Intelligent enough to realise
you've got to know when you've had enough.
I've had enough.
Listen,
I
we're
need
going to
go
have to
home.
finish. We've done an
Yeah,
hour
yeah.
and 20 minutes of talking.